Welcome to another episode of Legal for Tech, the podcast. So, guys, you recognize my voice now. It is Rosie here. And as I've said many, many times, this is just a group of students and young professionals who are very interested in technology, its regulation, and, well, so many interesting facts that come with it. So, today I'm joined by my colleague, finally back. Hello, Giacomo.
Hi, Rosie. It's really good to be back.
I'm so happy to see you because today we have a special guest, not only because he's special, but also because I love his sister. Hello, Santiago Hernández.
Hello, both. Yeah, I also love my sister. She's great.
It's good to know. But aside from your sister, who I think we will definitely mention throughout the conversation, tell us something about yourself. So, your
Yeah.
career, your field of interest, and what brought you here on Legal for Tech.
So I am a consultant at a company called Savanta, and essentially I work in market research, which is the industry of questions. And what we do is we track people's opinions on different aspects, different topics, and then we help our clients understand their customers better so they can create products or marketing materials that are better targeted to them. And yeah, I think it's a lot of fun. Like I get to travel the world, go to different places, meet clients face to face or also online. And it's definitely a very interesting area because it combines statistics with behavioral science and also just being a human being. At the end of the day, like when it comes to what products you buy, what services you go for, it's all about how they make you feel. So yeah, I just find it super interesting.
In terms of how you got to training into being a human being, what what type of educational background did you go for? Because I mean, we're all students. We want to know how to get
Yeah.
to your place potentially.
Yeah, so I actually went to Queen Mary University of London in the UK and I studied economics, maths, and statistics, which is a very demanding career. So yeah, very, very demanding, but it was worth it, definitely worth it. And when you go through that course, the main thing that you get told is you need to become an investment banker. And I was essentially like, okay, well, I'll look into it. Why not? Yeah, we'll see. And then after a couple of months, I just realized this is not for me. I do not want to be in this world. It's just, it lacks humanity in a sense. It's all about selling and the numbers and all this and that. And I'm like, no, I just want to actually apply some of the other more interesting bits that I've learned at the university into potentially something that makes me feel fulfilled. And then I literally just came across market research and I thought, oh, that looks interesting. They're using statistics for all of these different studies and also just understanding human behavior. And I thought, you know what? Let's give it a try. And I've been happy ever since.
Sharing all of our love for investment bankers who have the patience to keep on doing their job. I really find your current employment much more interesting, especially for the purpose of this podcast. So, I came across a very recent study that Savanta conducted, and it was published by your lovely sister, Catalina Hernandez. And I thought that was absolutely fascinating what you're doing, how you ran the research. I mean, tell us something more about this because I don't want to spoil, but I'm literally like jumping on the spot.
Yeah, of course. So essentially, the way that we do it is at Savanta, we have a thing called the Omnibus, where different companies can come and put different questions on it. And yeah, you can ask people anything, and it will be representative of the UK. We also have one in the US, and we also do different ones across different parts of the world, different countries. Um, and it's great because essentially, ever since I think late last year, I've been talking to different AI experts and different clients about the rise of AI and how it's taking over the world and all this and that. And every single one of them keeps saying to me, we actually like, yeah, we know that it's happening. We can see some very good examples out there, but we don't know how many people are actually using it in this way. We don't know how many people are using it for career advice or mental health advice or any of these massive parts of your human development. So all of those conversations were had. Then in my head, I was like, okay, yeah, that's true. There's nothing out there. And then one day I was talking to my sister, and then she said exactly the same thing to me. But it was like, you know what? We don't have any data, like any real statistical data on how many people are using AI for just job advice, how to use certain software at their jobs, or other things like physical health advice. And it's a massive problem because a lot of people, a lot of experts are relying on this sort of data in order to make their cases stronger and to really amplify what they're trying to say. So I thought, okay, let me just put something together, like a few deep questions. I did 5 questions in the end. And then I sent it to through the marketing team at Savanta. They said, you know what, that's actually a good, it would be quite interested to do this. Why not? And here we are now.
Following up on this, because this is gonna be like the focus of our conversation. What were there some unexpected findings of your study? Is there something that surprised you a lot after doing this report?
Yes. So the main finding that I thought was quite interesting was the fact that it seems to be those individuals that claim to have high to expert knowledge of how large language models like ChatGPT work that are using AI for these purposes like mental health advice, career advice, physical health advice, all of the 8 ones that I tested. They're using it significantly more than those that have minimal or basic knowledge of how AI works. And at the beginning, my hypothesis was it will be the whole way around. That is actually the ones that claim to have minimal or no knowledge that are using it way more. So to actually see that it's the opposite, it was quite interesting because it kind of shows, and I need to emphasize that word claim. They claim to have high to expert knowledge of how AI works. And that essentially is something that we have seen every single time a new tech gets built and pushed to the public and everyone can then use it. You feel like you know how something works, but really you don't. Like if you think about smartphones, how many of us do you think actually know what happens inside the smartphone for you to have a working camera or for you to be able to call people? Like you just simply click a button and it's so user friendly that it doesn't, you don't really think about these things. Um, so with this specific one as well, yes, 21% claim to have high to expert knowledge of how AI works, but maybe the real value would be a little bit lower. And it just shows how us as humans, we tend to kind of convince ourselves a little bit, where it's like, I'm using this for this purpose. I know that it's not potentially something that is everyone will agree with, but I'm just, yeah, I feel good. I know how to use it. Of course I do. And I just thought it was great to see that.
In terms of when you say they use it more, they use it less, do we have any data concerning the quality of that use? Because like I feel perhaps if I think I know how AI works a bit more, maybe I'm also concerned about, for example, the damages to the environment it brings with. So I'm like, I'm going to just ask the most important questions rather than asking it, what should I cook tonight or whatever.
No, that's actually a very good point. I feel like, yeah, it's not one of the things that I tested in this report, but we do know that the average consumer is not very aware of the environmental implications of it. And also because a lot of people don't know how it works. When you say to them every single time you use ChatGPT and you write a prompt, it uses the equivalent of a glass of water. In their heads, they're like, "What? How does that make any sense? It's a robot. It's a computer. Like I don't get it." And that's where we need more experts actually explaining to people and saying, "No, this is how it works." And yeah, it's using a lot of water to cool down, and that's why it's so important to only use it for specific important questions. But yeah, currently there's not a lot, and that's definitely a potential angle that I might look into in the future, just to understand what people think about it.
Considering what you have found, do you think in the future there's gonna be a change of your results? Do you think something is gonna impact what you have found in a different way?
Definitely. So we also asked for support, and yeah, how many people think it's okay to use AI in these ways? How many people disagree and say that it's not okay? And what we found is that around just below half of the UK adults agree that it's okay to use it for things like career development, job advice, mental health advice, um, legal advice. But there's also another notable proportion of between 20 and 40% that are not that don't agree and that actually say that is not okay to be using it in these ways. And what I do believe is that in the future that gap will close a little bit more, because there's also a 25% proportion that neither agree or disagree. And they're in between. They don't really know what's happening. They will need data. They will need some truths about the advantages and disadvantages and the potential risks in order to convince themselves of, yeah, it's okay to use it this way, or it's not okay. So it could go either way. But what I think is recently I've been essentially bombarded with so many examples of companies that are using AI in many different ways, and also some companies that are replacing their employees for AI bots. Literally the other day, I was taking the train and I saw an advert about, oh, our bots won't work from home in Ibiza next week because they're always there 24/7. We are the future. This is the AI era, essentially. And yeah, in my head, I was like, wow, this is happening. Obviously, these companies wouldn't spend a lot of money invested into these new products and into these AI robots. So the support is there and it will only carry on growing, but only if companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, and all the other ones can get it right, in the sense that you need to be looking at how many people support you, how many support this idea of AI. And currently, it's quite a lot of us in the UK, so it's looking good for them. That I'm pretty sure if any of them read my report, they will be happy right now to see those figures.
In terms of like, because I've told you we're all students and we're all looking for jobs and stuff now. And a question that is kind of pressing amongst my colleagues is like, should I use ChatGPT to write my CV? Because the company that, receives it uses bots as well. So they're likely to recognize some kind of parameters. And if ChatGPT embeds them in my CV, I'm more likely to get that job. Do you think that's a plausible argument to make?
That is actually a very, is it ethical? Is it unethical? Like, at the end of the day, companies are investing in you as a human being. Yes, you can ask ChatGPT to write your CV, but it comes down to those interviews that you have with the recruitment person and them essentially being able to see any sort of, yeah, just your attitude, your knowledge. So to an extent, I agree that it's okay because obviously AI is great when it comes to organizing data for you, organizing your CV perhaps, but relying on it to that point that it's like, okay, I'm going to get that job because ChatGPT is doing a great job for me and it's creating the perfect CV. No, definitely no. I think at Savanta, we like to use this kind of phrase of we work with artificial intelligence half of the time for all the admin bits, but also when it comes to the real bits, the things that matter, we put our human intelligence. And that's kind of how people need to be aware of how to use it from now on. Yes, you can ask ChatGPT, just give me like a main skeleton of a CV. What section should I write about? But then it's your job to kind of just put the things that you want on that CV that reflect who you are as a person and your experience. So yeah, at the minute, I don't think it's good enough to be relying on it, and I also don't think it's ethical because it's not like these companies that are using bots to detect bots and stuff like that. There's quite a lot of things that they could improve to from the recruitment part. So yeah, we don't need more confusing CVs going around or anything.
talking about the likelihood to follow the advice, like one may ask whatever. I may ask my mother for an advice. Unlikely, am I going to follow it? But the question is, there are so many laws, especially the AI Act, for example, that provide that specific AI technology needs to have embedded safeguards to ensure that the consumer, the user, is protected because they may not be able to make a judgment that avoids using advice that is not compatible with human rights in some cases. I mean, there are AI that push you into the direction of committing harmful things. Um, but from your study, is that like, did you notice that potentially the majority of people understand when an advice given by a chatbot is to be followed or not? Like, do you think that legislators are over pressuring firms into putting in these safeguards when the average person kind of knows which way to go?
Yeah, the average person doesn't really care. What I found was that 80%, yeah, 80% of those people that have used AI in those ways, to career advice, mental health, physical advice, actually follow the advice that the AI gave them, which is quite impressive in a sense, because yeah, one of the arguments that I've read online is that yes, AI can provide advice, but people are not following it. Whereas with the results that I from my report, it shows the opposite. Like the vast majority are following the advice, and it is a massive part. Yeah, it's something very very important to consider for legislators when actually, yeah, like you need to have a lot of different safety procedures in order to make sure that people are having the correct guide to expert knowledge when needed. If it's something about mental health advice, for example, it's so personal and so sensitive that talking to a bot, it just won't understand what you're going through. It might be able to mimic sympathy, or it would be able to process it in a very effective way and then give you like an effective answer, but it still doesn't justify getting rid of the therapists or any other human expert that can actually help you. And it's something quite interesting because recently I've come across a company that are very well known in the UK, and they have started to promote a AI powered chat box where you can talk about your feelings and your mental health, and you can just tell it anything and it will give you a little bit of advice. And they have said on the thing, take advice as with caution. Don't be relying on it. Don't, yeah, like you can talk to it as you want about anything, but don't rely on it. And I just think putting this back to the customer is not right. Like every single time that these conversations come up, um, it's the same thing. It's like, oh, it's up to you to decide whether or not you're going to follow this advice that the AI gave you, or yeah, you have to really be careful because AI can make mistakes or something like that. And I just don't think it's right. Like a lot of people don't know how it works. So how are they going to judge whether or not to follow the advice it gave them or not? And I think that's where the regulations need to be tightened a bit more.
Mm. A point that I was wondering about is I recently read an article about whether people are likely to follow or not the legal advice. So it was on the lawyer's side. And indeed, chatbot generated advices seem to be more plausible to people. And they were even more likely to follow it the moment that they knew it was the chatbot and not the person. It wasn't a legal kind of advisor giving the information. I was wondering if your study was thinking perhaps of future progress with it and thinking maybe to ask the people whether they would follow a mental health practitioner or an AI bot, and which one they would be more likely to follow up to in the end.
It's quite interesting because for legal advice, what we found was that the number one reason why people are doing it is because they believe AI guides them to the correct legal paths or resources. And that in itself is huge, because obviously, if you believe the AI has all of this knowledge, all of this power about the legal world, then yeah, of course, you're not going to be following the advice of one lawyer or one legal expert, Um, so there's a lot of different groups. Obviously, the general population is following the advice when it comes to legal terms. But when it comes to MPs, for example, at Savanta, we also have an Omni product that is only MPs from Parliament, and they think the information provided by AI on legal advice is actually unreliable. Like, are very, very good. Now, I can't say exactly because it's not, he's one of my clients, but they believe that this information is not reliable at all to the users. So you have very contradicting groups. In one part, like you said, a lot of people were following the advice when they realized it was AI chatbot instead of a person. But then there's other groups that are potentially more, that are in charge of the country, like NPs, saying, actually, no, it's unreliable. And there's so many different and contrasting ideas of how to use this that it's quite hard to actually arrive to the truth, like what is actually the correct way to do it.
A question that I would like to ask is whether MPs do follow legal advice even when given by actual human beings. On that, I'm not too sure, but this is maybe not for today to ask. But just to close up, would you mind sharing with us perhaps some limitations that you found in conducting your study and something that you may want to change in the future?
Yeah. So obviously, the way that we did this was online. We essentially approached 2,000 people, said, participate in our survey, please take our survey. Then we made it nationally representative, but we have to address the fact that not everyone in the UK has access to the internet, or they are not literate. So that puts one limitation to it. At the same time, because we're talking about AI, large language models like ChatGPT, then it's a very good estimate of the real value, even if you surveyed every single person in the UK right now. However, I think one of the main bits that I potentially would want to change in the future is kind of just going into understanding how many people have an actual good grasp of how AI works, and maybe having some questions in there to test it out and then compare the results with the report that I've just published now. Because I think right now, I essentially asked them to rate themselves on a scale of 1 to 10 when it comes to their knowledge. But it would be quite good, perhaps, going to one of the advanced analytics side, more of like the behavioral science metrics that they use, and just really try to understand to the T what is happening here.
Bringing Rosie back on track, I would close with the final question that we ask everyone that comes to our podcast. Do you have any recommendations about book, podcast, or whatever that comes up to your mind that we could read or listen to understand better the topics that we discussed today?
Yeah, so there is one that I listen to quite a lot called the Today podcast on BBC Sound. And they do quite a lot of different podcasts as well, but they are always very timely. They are relevant to what's happening right now. And yeah, it's the BBC. I mean, they cannot, I guess, say a lot of very controversial things, but it's very informative. And that's something that I really appreciate, the fact that they take their time to explain to someone that doesn't have the knowledge what is happening, this is the situation, and give you the context that you need in order to understand.
I shall give you a very bad news, actually, Santiago. I was listening to yesterday's episode and they said that they're going to split up the podcast.
No.
I was distraught. Apparently, Amal is going to do one side and then Nick is going to do his like political thinking thing, um, which is incredibly insightful knowledge about this podcast, I guess. But yeah, they're going to split up the podcast. But there is another podcast from the BBC that I would definitely recommend in case you wanted to listen to something. It's called Artificial Human. and it's very much on the topic of artificial intelligence and all the good and bad things about it. So this plug for the BBC is pretty welcome, but maybe they will continue with with that kind of spectrum, I would say. Um, that said, unfortunately, we have to say goodbye. And I will just remind all of our listeners to, yes, listen to BBC Podcast, but also listen to the Legal for Tech, the podcast, of course. And I'm sure that Santiago will be listening to us in all our future and past episodes.
Oh yeah.
And yeah. And also, I would just encourage to follow Catalina and Santiago on LinkedIn because they've got incredible knowledge and incredible content. And I would say that most of my understanding of anything that's happening in the field of AI, I mean, it's basically Catalina. So really huge well done. You have a huge family and it's great. That said, I will say goodbye to you, Santiago. It was such a pleasure to finally meet you.
Likewise, great to meet you guys.
And great to see you again, Giacomo. This was all.
Thank you.
Thank you.